Well, hello and welcome to December. Yeah, we've reached what theoretically at least should be the final month of 2020, and it's been a busy week indeed. We've got Carriage Disputes to discuss, Hulu's Watch Party is now open to everyone, Discovery announced a brand new streaming service, and HBO Max did its best to dominate headlines for the past few days. But first, yes, if you're new here, welcome to Cord Cutting Weekly. This is where we wrap up the past week in cord cutting and streaming news. And alongside this weekly show, we also do weekly live Q&A sessions with Jess on Wednesdays and topical deep dives like this week's look at the best streaming devices at any price point. So if you haven't done so already, please do consider clicking on those like and subscribe buttons down below. And as always, all the stories we're about to discuss today will have links to those stories down below in the video description. And with that out of the way, let's start off with a solid block of HBO Max news. Okay, to kick things off this week, HBO Max and Warner Bros. Announced that all of the film studio's 2021 releases will come to the streaming service at the same time as their movie theater premieres. Now, to be clear, they won't stay on HBO Max indefinitely. Instead, what's happening here is that these new films will be available for a 1-month period on the streaming service starting on the day of their release. And we're talking about US availability here. Warner Bros. Still has, shall we say, traditional release plans for these films on the international level. And this affects a huge number of highly anticipated films next year. We're talking about releases like Dune, the fourth Matrix movie, Godzilla vs. Kong, the new Space Jam movie, and a lot more. And so with this announcement, of course we have to ask, does that change anyone's thoughts on returning to movie theaters in the near future? Also, does a move like this make the new streaming service any more enticing to you? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And in more HBO Max news, one of the knocks against the service so far has been its maximum 1080p resolution. And if you're concerned about all those brand new movies coming to the service without higher resolutions available, well, fear not. The service will start offering content in up to 4K resolution with support for HDR or high dynamic range video starting with the Christmas Day release of Wonder Woman 1984. And just so we're clear, that doesn't mean that all content will suddenly be available in Ultra HD, but it does mean that those new releases, starting again with Wonder Woman 1984, will get the 4K treatment. So yes, it looks like the streaming service is setting up for a pretty big 2021. And yes, as of the recording of this episode, there's still no word on an official Roku app, but of course we'll let you know if and when that changes. And before we move on, there's just one more bit of HBO Max news to go over, and that's the removal of the service's 7-day free trial period. Now, since its launch earlier this year, HBO Max has offered a week-long trial period for its $14.99 per month service, but that option no longer appears on the company's homepage. As for why, well, honestly, we kind of just went over why. The streaming service is on the brink of a string of high-profile exclusive premieres, starting once again with Wonder Woman 1984 in a few weeks and continuing on throughout 2021. And for reference, Disney Plus made a similar move just before the anticipated release of Hamilton earlier this year. Now, Disney didn't specifically mention Hamilton at the time when it made the decision to remove its trial offer, and so far, HBO Max is also not citing a specific film in its removal of its free trial. But it's not difficult to connect those dots. Now, all that being said, this change affects those signing up for HBO Max directly. There are still ways to gain free trials to the service through add-ons at, say, Hulu or YouTube TV. For now, at least, those free trials are still on offer if you go that route. And in other streaming service news, we have a brand new entry to talk about in the form of Discovery Plus. That's the name of the upcoming service from Discovery Incorporated, and the company made an official announcement this week. The new service is set to go live on January 4th, 2021, with prices starting at $4.99 per month with ads and $6.99 per month without ads. And in case you need a refresher, here's a quick look at the lineup of brands under the Discovery umbrella that are all planning to bring content to the service. And we have a lengthy post on our site that lists some of the original content currently planned for Discovery Plus, so if you're curious about the service, make sure to take a look at what's on offer. And we'll have much more to discuss in the near future, as we're still awaiting for more details on, say, initial rollout, platform and device support, and more. For now, though, let us know what you think so far of the pricing, brand lineup, and expected content. Do you think Discovery has a hit on its hands here? You know where to let us know. In fuboTV news, the service announced a new deal to acquire Balto Sports. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, Balto develops tools for folks to organize and take part in fantasy leagues. So it should not shock anyone to learn that this deal will help fuboTV expand into the free-to-play gaming and online sports wagering markets. fuboTV co-founder and CEO David Gandler said the company sees online wagering as complementary to the service's sports-centric live TV streaming. So this could open up another major revenue source for the company, but terms of the deal were not disclosed. One market research firm, however, estimated that online sports wagering could reach $155 billion by 2024. So I think it's safe to say that fuboTV is hoping to carve a solid slice of that pie for itself in the coming years. Should be interesting. In carriage dispute news, last week on our site, we reported that AT&T could soon lose more than 60 local stations around the country if it couldn't reach an agreement with Tegna, which owns those 60-plus stations. And earlier this week, those stations were in fact pulled from both DirecTV and Uverse. On its site, AT&T published a message saying, in part, that Tegna has resorted to blacking out popular local teams or any remaining hit shows at the worst possible time in order to extract unwarranted increases over their already high fees despite their fading popularity, leaving consumers to foot the bill. In other words, at the time we were recording this week's show, the two sides were still working on a new agreement. And as always, keep an eye out for updates over at our news website, cordcuttersnews.com, for all the latest. And that wasn't the only channel blackout we saw this week. Elsewhere, Dish and Nexstar could not reach an agreement on their contract extension, which led to what's been billed as the largest local station blackout in U.S. history. In all, some 164 local channels in 120 markets across 42 states were affected. And as with AT&T's issues with Tegna, Dish is citing what it views as unreasonable demands on Nexstar's part. Dish also said that Nexstar is trying to force Dish to carry WGN America and suggests that part of the reason for the fees Nexstar is demanding is so that it can recover the costs of acquiring that nationwide channel. In all, some 5.4 million Dish customers are being affected by the blackout, and we'll of course keep a close eye on both disputes and share any updates as soon as we learn more. For now though, are there any DirecTV, Uverse, or Dish customers out there feeling the loss of those local channels? Feel free to sound off in the comment section down below. Meanwhile, Nexstar did manage to secure a multi-year carriage deal with YouTube TV, which will indeed bring WGN America to the streaming service starting on January 19th, 2021. And with those roughly 3 million or so YouTube TV subscribers joining in, WGN America is expected to reach about 78 million homes nationwide. And if you're unfamiliar with the network, it's Nexstar's only wholly owned national cable channel, and it's home to, among other things, the News Nation nightly newscast that airs at 8 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you're a YouTube TV subscriber, you should be getting access to the channel early next year. Elsewhere, Hulu announced that its group watch feature, known as Watch Party, is now available to all subscribers. Of course, several streaming services have come out with similar group watching features this year. The idea is to help foster a sense of shared experiences during the pandemic when many of us are avoiding in-person social gatherings. In Hulu's case, the company started testing its Watch Party feature back in May, first limiting it to those signed up for Hulu without ads. And then later in the year, it opened up availability for limited periods of time, like when big new shows were about to premiere. But this week's announcement signals widespread availability, including those on Hulu with limited commercial plans. Now, if you haven't tried it yet, Watch Party lets you create parties of up to 8 viewers. To get started, you can click on the Watch Party icon on a show's or movie's details page and share that link with family and friends. And each viewer can pause whenever they want, like if you have to go take a phone call or something, and you can click a button labeled Click to Catch Up to, well, click and catch up with everyone else in your party. And if you've used the Watch Party feature already, feel free to share your experiences so far with your fellow cord cutters and streamers down in the comment section below. And in streaming device news, the new Chromecast with Google TV is getting a new feature that will let users kind of train Google TV to suggest more relevant and appropriate content in the future. So as you might know, Google TV can already take into account things like your watch history and searches to suggest new shows and movies you might like. But this new feature lets you fine-tune things with a Tinder-style swipe right or left. You'll be presented with a series of shows or movies and asked either to approve or reject the choices. If you approve, you're essentially telling Google TV to keep suggesting similar content. And conversely, if you reject, you're basically saying, I don't want to see stuff like this in the future. The new feature is accessible in the settings menu under Content Preferences, and Google says it should be rolling out to Chromecast with Google TV users over the coming weeks. And there you go, those were some of the biggest stories in streaming and cord cutting this week. And as always, we thank you all for tuning in. And don't forget to check out our news website, cordcuttersnews.com, where you can stay up to date 24/7. Plus, we're continuing to track all the latest and greatest holiday sales on our deals page, which we'll have linked down below in the video description. And again, please do consider clicking those all-important like and subscribe buttons down below to catch our new videos every week. For now, though, I thank you all again for tuning in. My name is Philip Palermo, and I hope you all have a safe and wonderful weekend. See you all next week. Take care.